Okay, for this part we're going to be having a look at sustainability, and really when we talk about sustainable development, we are looking at making sure we can sustain population sizes from different species. Now the problem is we are taking more and more resources, plants and animals, out of their natural habitat, and we are killing them for our own good. A good example of this is cod. 20 years ago you could quite easily go to the fish and chip shop and just ask for cod and chips and you'd get it no problem. But with technology, fishermen are actually better at finding where the fish are and catching them with the nets, and this meant that there's been a lot of overfishing. So rules had to be put in place to ensure the cod population didn't become extinct. And what they did is they put there is a certain quota you're allowed to catch. If you catch any more than that, you have to put them back. And also, if you catch any fish below a certain size, you have to put those back as well, because they're no good for a fish and chip shop, and it means that they then will grow into adults and will be able to have offspring. So if you remember, we talked about a species, and a true species is where you have organisms of similar characteristics that can produce fertile offspring. And if we are taking those species out of their natural habitats, then it means that they have a danger of becoming extinct. There's other reasons as well. Human building activities destroy habitats. We overhunt animals or plants for food, and sometimes for pleasure. Unfortunately, probably within your lifetime, or certainly your children's lifetime, tigers will probably become extinct because of hunting, and that's all down to humans, which I think is a real shame. Humans outcompete animals for resources such as food, and the climate change as well is also causing species to die out, and human activities obviously contribute to this climate change. Now there are certain species that are endangered, and they are on an endangered list, and we do a lot to try and ensure these species are not made extinct. For instance, pandas are really endangered. There's one panda in Britain in the zoo in Scotland at the moment, and around the world there are only very few pandas. Now some of this is down to their own breeding patterns and the fact that they only breed very rarely, and some of it is down to humans taking away their habitat so they haven't got anything to eat. So to become an endangered species, it means it will become extinct if their numbers fall below a critical level. There's not enough genetic variation in the population, because there's not enough breeding taking place to increase the gene pool, or the populations are restricted to smaller areas. So there's 6 ways that we can save a species. First of all, we can protect their habitats and put conservation orders onto them. The Galapagos Islands are a good example of this, because that is the most diverse and rich area in the whole world for different species. Education. The fact that we're talking about it means that you will understand the dangers of it, and if this is happening around the world, then this is hopefully going to have an impact. Breeding programs, as I mentioned to you, the panda that's in Scotland, they tried to get the panda to breed not so long ago, and they introduced a male, and they didn't breed. So what they had to do was they had to artificially inseminate the panda to try and make sure she got pregnant so that she can have offspring. So there are programs in place. Laws are put in place to make it illegal to hunt. There's artificial ecosystems, for instance like zoos are a good one. Some people say zoos are cruel, other people say well really it's a conservation project, because what we're trying to do is conserve species that are endangered. And the last one is something called seed banks. The great thing about plants is when they produce seeds, they don't need to germinate straight away. we can store them away. As long as they're dry and dark, you can store them away for years, and then when you are ready to germinate the seeds, you just water them, and you just put them into some warm soil, and then away they go. So this means we can conserve endangered species. Problems that come from this is you are reducing the gene pool all the time, and when this happens, if you have a disease that is introduced, that disease can quite easily wipe out a population if you've got a very narrow gene pool. So this can cause problems. Also, you've got competition. Now, why do we want to save species? It might sound weird, but tourism. Some countries rely on people coming to visit to have a look at their species, and so that increases their economical value for the country and for jobs and things like that. Culture. Some cultures actually worship different species, and again, that's important to them. Future generations, as I mentioned earlier, it would be so sad if your children can't see some of the species that you can see today. And then there's medicines. Some plants in particular are used to make certain medicines to cure diseases. If we haven't got them, then we'll be in trouble. Okay, I'm going to talk about whaling now, because this is one of the real big projects that's taken place over the last few years. Now, during the Second World War, meat from cows and pigs and sheep was quite restricted, because we was on rations, and in places like Japan, they used to hunt whales, because the whale blubber meat is actually quite a good source of meat that people were using. So if you have a look at this diagram of the whale, you'll see that certain parts are used for certain things. For instance, you may not have known that the ambergris from the intestines is used in perfumes. The teeth are used for buttons, piano keys and jewellery. The skin was used to make belts and shoes and handbags and luggage. The whale meat used in pet food and human food, and so on. Now you can see, I think, if you look at that, most of those things we could get from other sources and not from whales. And when biologists realised that the numbers of whales were going down so dramatically, there was a ban put in place, an international ban. Now, some countries would not sign the treaty to say that they wouldn't hunt. Some said that they had to hunt for religious reasons. Some said that they had to hunt for scientific reasons. And all of these reasons really are not good enough, and so there are still problems. However, if you're asked to talk about what are going to be the problems with that, well, you can't really police the whole of the ocean because it is so huge. So it does cause problems for people. Okay, so as I mentioned, you've got fishing quotas, as I mentioned with the cod, as a sustainable development project. Another one is managing woodlands. It used to be that if we needed wood, we'd just cut down whole forests and just use the wood and not worry about it, until we started to realise actually we're cutting down all of the forests much faster than we are actually replacing them, because it does take time for wood to grow. So there's projects in place now. If you cut trees down, you have to replant new ones to ensure you are sustaining the population of wood, so that we've still got some in 20 or 30 years time. And really, if you buy any wood from anywhere, it will say this is from a sustainable source. Okay.